Hi, Ashley. How
Hi,
are you?
Josh. I'm well, thank you. Nice to see you.
You too. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this film because I had a great time watching it. And I thought it was interesting to see you in a much more contained post-apocalyptic type story after starring in the Divergent films. So was that almost, the contained setting of the farmhouse quite beneficial to what was a very character-driven story for you?
I think you put that so well, Josh. Yes, it's very contained. And I lived on set. Set was a nature preserve in Oregon. I mean, how ideal is that for this rural woman? And the set itself was an old cabin, and we shot the film with candlelight, so there was no electricity. We used some flashlights for a couple of scenes. And I walked from my tiny home to set through the woods on the river every day. So my world was very small, but the emotions are really big, and the themes and the philosophies we're exploring are really big too. So it was a wonderful, it's one of the funner movies I've ever made, actually.
Oh, that's amazing. And Lee is such an interesting character. And I love about this film where we're just thrown into this world. There's not a ton of backstory and we just get to
Mhm.
pick up with these characters. But did you talk up to Alec about that a lot and to learn more about her history, or was that not something you felt you needed for this particular performance?
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed that. It's a very efficient story. It's very lean. Alec Tvaldi is not an indulgent filmmaker, which I really appreciate about that, about him. And, I did have to think a lot about, I kept a journal as Aunt Lee. I started writing, and that was a really rewarding exercise. And I wrote about myself and my background, and I wrote about my nieces and my dreams and hopes and fears for them. And yeah, it was pretty cool.
Oh, cool. And working with Katie and Sarah as well, I loved obviously that mother-daughter type dynamic. And then in contrast, of course, with Asher, there's quite a combative dynamic, even
Mhm.
down to the way he eats irritatingly. So what was it like working with the three of them and finding that groove with them of what the relationships needed to be like?
Sarah Pidgeon and Katie Douglas were such a delight. We kind of fell into each other the moment we met. I lived in the tiny house, as I said, and had them over, lit some candles, sat on the floor, and I basically said, "Look, I've got a couple hen wings here, and if you want to get under, there's a lot of room for you, and it's an offer, not a demand." And we just developed a pretty wonderful sense of community right away. And I think that really informs the relationships on screen as well. And I didn't have someone like that when I was coming up, and I think that not only would I have benefited from it, it would have helped me avert a lot of male sexual violence if someone had known that that producer who was inviting me for dinner, it was a Sunday, it was a bar, he was married, it was not for work, he was a predator. I didn't know those kinds of things, and I wish that I'd had an Annette Bening or a Michelle Pfeiffer to talk to, and I am that woman for people who are coming up today and encourage those kinds of relationships. So there was a lot going on set, off set.
Yeah, well, that's so fascinating to hear, obviously, how that played into your performance and into the film. And of course, I know Alec started writing the movie before the pandemic, but since then, we've all lived through a pandemic. So, did your experiences influence your approach to Lee and the character? And was that in the back of your mind?
I think my approach was really informed by the understanding I have of the really not just need, but the drive we humans have for things like connection, safety, and belonging. Like that's in our evolutionary drive. And we all have ways of trying to meet those needs. Some of them are graceful, some of them are pretty clumsy. And I was thinking about what I'm doing as Aunt Lee that is meeting those needs and just went for it. She has developed a plan and she is going to stick with the plan.
Oh, well, amazing. Well, Ashley, I so enjoyed your work in this film, and you're such an inspiration with what you've done outside the film industry as well. So, it's such a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh. That's very kind.
Have a great
Josh,
day. Thank
appreciate
you.
it. We'll